Hi. Okay.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Frank Riccobono. I'm affiliated with Iona Prep, and I'm also on the board of the NYCFL as the technology rep. Welcome to our NYCFL judge training. You are here to be trained as a judge in speech. And in case you didn't know, the way that this event works in order to bring children to these tournaments, coaches are required to bring a certain number of judges per student they want to compete. So the fact that you are here willing to give us some of your time enables so many more students to attend this tournament and to participate in this activity. So we are really grateful for you for giving us your time this evening and for hopefully giving us your time this Saturday or some future Saturday throughout the year. The purpose of this session tonight is to give you an overview of what it means to judge a speech and debate tournament, the logistics of how our tournaments work, some of the expectations we have for you, and to hopefully also answer any questions you might have before we throw you into one of these events. We're going to first take you through each of the events, one category at a time. And then at the end, I'll also give you a brief overview of some of the technology that we use that makes everything possible this weekend. So, starting out in general, what is speech and debate? What are we trying to do here? We are trying to educate students to be good and persuasive and talented speakers. They should be able to stand in front of you, hold your attention, hold an audience, in some cases transport you to a fictional world, in other cases inform and educate you, in other cases persuade you of something, and your job is to help them grow as speakers in each of those activities. Going to start with the events that we call the public address events. And Mr. Franz from Monsignor Farrell will help explain one of the events to us, which is extemporaneous speaking. But the general idea of all the public address events is this is non-fictional presentation and trying to persuade or convince you of something. So let's begin with extemporaneous speaking, and then I'll carry on with the rest of the events.
Okay, thanks a lot, Frank. Um, First of all, again, we reiterate many times, we do thank you for taking the time to do this. This is a very demanding task for the kids and for the judges. I teach in an all-guys high school. It's very sports-oriented, and the football team thinks they're big men because they play a 3-hour game on a Saturday. They don't know what a speech competition looks like. So, as Frank said, the basic idea of all of these categories of competition, speech competition, is the students will stand in front of you one at a time and deliver their piece. In the case of extemporaneous speaking, it is unique among all of these categories. In every other case, a student has a piece of work that they've either memorized or that they are reading to you from a script. In extemporaneous speaking, they arrive that day having no idea what they're going to speak on for the competition. Extemporaneous speakers are usually very well versed in politics, international affairs, economics, government, all that sort of thing. So when they come for the day, just to show you what the kids are doing so you understand when you see it as a judge, the students are all going to be put, the extemp students are all going to be put in a room with me called the prep room. They will be pre-assigned to competition rooms in groups of usually 5 or 6. So they will know that they are assigned for the first round of competition to speak in room 112 and that they are the second speaker in that room. They know that going in. When it comes time for them to begin their preparation, I will call them all up. I will call for all the first speakers to come down front to see me. They'll stand in front of me. We have them lined up by what room they're eventually going to be speaking in. And they're standing in front of an envelope. That envelope assigned to that room has a handful of slips of paper in it. When I tell them draw, they will randomly choose out of that 3 slips of paper. On those slips are questions, topics. They're written in a style where the student is going to be asked to make a case. So they're all about current events. We're not playing Trivial Pursuit with the kids, although you will hear speeches about countries you may not be familiar with or Supreme Court cases you may never have heard of, but the kids do know. Well, each of them has chosen 3 of those slips. They look at those slips, pick the one they want, and that becomes their question for that round. From that moment, they have 30 minutes to research, write, and memorize a 7-minute speech that addresses the question. All of the questions are written. Many of you, I'm sure, remember being in high school and college. Some of you may be teachers. They're all written as essay questions. The students have to take a position, and then they have to build a case to prove the position. So they may be asked to give advice. What advice would you give to the Democratic Party in the current government shutdown? That may be predictive. Which party do you think will take the greater blame for the government shutdown? They may be explanatory. How will the government shutdown affect government operations? They may be, well, that would be more of a predictive question. It may be explanatory. What is behind the current government shutdown? In every case, the student is taking a position, like a thesis in an essay, and then building using data, expert quotes, factual information that they can cite sources for, a case to persuade you that what they are saying is a correct analysis or good advice or reasonably predictive. They have that 30 minutes to do that. So they're doing the research and they're drafting, and this is critical. The kids are drafting really an outline. This is how extemp is actually done. They memorize not a speech, but they memorize an outline and a roadmap. So when they stand in front of you, they are actually composing the speech to a great degree as they are delivering it. They know what they want to say, where they want to go, what their outline looks like, but they are, at least to some degree, making it up as they go. Well, while the students are preparing those speeches, you, as the judge, are going to that competition room. So you've been assigned as the judge to room 112. So off you go to the competition room, you go in, you sit down, you get yourself settled. Frank is going to show you later how you set up your ballot and all of that online, but you'll have that in front of you. You'll see the list of the students that are supposed to come and speak to you. You'll have the ballot set up, and you will need a timer. There are timers you can have on your computer. There are timers that are online, or you can use a stopwatch or your own cell phone. The students will then come to you one at a time. So you will be the only person in that room, in theory. Now, I will tell you, very often, particularly early in the year, you will have observers there. So don't be surprised if an adult comes and says, I'm observing the tournament for the day because I'm learning how to be a judge, or a kid may come. We send kids all the time who are thinking about getting involved with speech, and they want to know what it looks like before they get involved. I try to bring kids to tournaments first so they can see it. So a kid may say, do you mind if I sit in and observe? And there we go. Normally, though, you'll be the only one there. The room, by the way, you're in may be very small. The other rounds, the other categories of competition have a number of people in the room. So we have to use the large classrooms for that. For extemp, because it's only going to be you and the student speaking to you, very often you're in a small office or some other small space. You just have to kind of get used to that. Okay, now it's time for the competition. I will normally have sent out a blast to all of the judges of the round saying the kids started drawing at 9:30. You can expect your first speaker at 10 o'clock, 30 minutes later. Okay, so now it's about 10 o'clock, let's say. First kid comes, they should tap on the door, they should enter the room, and we instruct them to introduce themselves. Good morning, I'm speaker number 325. You should double check. Look on your ballot, make sure you've got that kid there, the kid's in the right room, they're speaking in the right order, you're set up to listen to them and take notes. The student will then give to you that question slip. You should ask to see it. You should keep it, actually. It's yours. So you know what the student is supposed to be talking about. The student will then have the very crucially important, please, time signal conversation. The other categories you'll hear about tonight, the students already have their speeches memorized. They already know how long they are. The time signals are, for many of them, not as important. They'll tell you that. I'm not making a judgment. They'll say, no, I don't need time signals. The extempers always need time signals because they are making it up as they go. So the student will say to you, please give me a 5 down. Don't accept that from them. Ask them to show you what they mean by a 5 down so you both know. What they should mean by it is this. The student has 7 minutes to speak. When they are 2 minutes into the competition, they have 5 minutes left. You can use a hand and say, just put it up. The kids will see it. They know I've got 5 minutes left. I have 2 minutes in. 4 minutes left. You're counting down. 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left, 1 minute left. At 6 minutes and 30 seconds into their speech, they have 30 seconds left to 7 minutes. You want to show them a C at half, it's called. A fist at 7 minutes. That tells the kid their time has expired. But they have 30 seconds of grace. So they can continue speaking for 30 seconds, but they have to finish up. The kid should know that. And it's up to the kid to keep track of that. So once they see that, they get no further time signals, and they know they have 30 seconds to wrap it up. If the kid goes 7 minutes and 31 seconds, they cannot be ranked first in the round. That is the penalty. So again, ask the student to show you, please tell me, what do you mean by a 5 down? 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left, 3 minutes, 2, 1 minute left, a C at 6 minutes and 30 seconds, a fist at 7 minutes, and that's that. We are going to try to have for all of you there on Saturday. I can't guarantee we'll have them for every room, but we're going to try to have, time cards. So you have these with you. You should show the student, and the student and you should agree if you're going to use them. 5, 4, and down, 3. We can all count, of course, but 30 seconds, a C at half, and you started your grace period. This is 7 minutes. You started the grace period, finish up. Make sure you and the kid agree on that. Some of the kids don't like the cards. I don't know why, but they're used to not having them. They're used to hand signals. If that's what the kid wants, that's what they get. Okay, so you agree on the time signals, everything's set, and now the kid stands at the front of the room. The kid will usually take a deep breath, and launch into their speech. And they will speak for 7 minutes. You will hear the speeches are remarkably similar in structure. The kid they are not required to do this, but they all do it. They'll give you an introduction. They will state the question that they have to do, and then they will answer it and give you 3 points of analysis, or divide the question into 3 aspects, or something like this. 3 is the magic number. When I coach the kids, 2 is probably not enough. You're not analyzing enough, and 4 is too hard for people to remember. So 3 is the sweet spot. In each of those points, they should be using data, they should be citing sources, and they should be giving you a logical argument that proves the point. 3 points, they should then repeat the question, re-answer it, but now with a little more fuller, subtle answer, and close out with a conclusion. You may all remember the 5-paragraph academic essay. This is a 5-paragraph academic essay in verbal form. That's what it comes down to. As the kid is speaking, you should be taking, I would advise, copious notes. The student is used to this. They're not going to take it as rude that you are taking tons of notes while they're trying to talk. You should be looking up at them as often as you can. Here's why. What are you evaluating the speech for? It is a speech. It is oral communication, and therefore the degree to which they deliver it fluently. They use gestures well as, again, I always tell them punctuation marks. They shouldn't be just flappy hands. They should be using their gesture, their voice, even movement as ways to visually organize the speech. So you may see them step to one side for their first point and then step to the other side for their second point. So you want to see that they're delivering a speech well. That's part of this. However, the greater emphasis and extent is on the argumentation, the logic, the organization, the depth of analysis, the clever use of facts, and how persuasive the case is. So you are listening for that and taking notes on how well the student moves you. You are not expected to be an expert in constitutional law or in international economics, even though the questions will often involve that. The burden is on the student to educate you to the point where you can understand the case they're making. So if they have to explain a point of current diplomacy, that's on them. If they're making reference to a person, they should be telling you, well, this is the premier of Kazakhstan. They shouldn't leave you guessing. Take notes, because at the end of all of this, you're going to do a couple of things. You are going to rank the student. How well did they do compared to the other students in the room? Were they best, second best, third best? You are also going to rate the students with what we call speaker points. It's a little bit like a grade out of 100. And third, you are going to write a critique for the student. Notes to the student about how they did and why you gave them the rank that you did. We try to emphasize to judges, you have the privilege, and most of us who are involved in this are educators. We're teachers. It's a vocation for us. It is a call. It's a cause for us. We consider it a privilege. You have the privilege of getting to be a teacher to his kid for a day. They walk away, they will get medals and trophies and stuff. This weekend, they actually just get certificates because we saved the money we would have spent on trophies and use it for some of our service projects. But they walk away with those medals and trophies, and that's great, and that's nice, and the kids like it. But the bigger thing they walk away with is what they've learned, how they've learned to be more eloquent, more confident, how they've learned to communicate better. The motto of the league is leaders through speech. So they've learned to be a little bit better leader through the art of speech. You get to tell them how to do that. So you should try to find something they're doing well. Say something nice, but it's not just making it up. The kids often, if they give a good speech, they often do not know why it's a good speech. They know they got a great rank, but they don't know what they did right. Tell them. I found the way that you use the statistics very clear and very logical, or you really made me understand what the legal issue is behind this thing. Tell them that. And then give them some kind of advice about how they can do better next time. What wasn't so great? I got a little bit lost when you started, talking about the economics in this other country, or I'm not sure you really understand what that statistic means if you know enough about it to say that. Give the kids some advice on how they can do a little better with their speech as well. You spoke a little too fast for me to follow, or your volume was great. I could hear you throughout the whole speech. This is really helping the kid to grow. And in the long run, it's the most important thing to most of us as coaches. The kid I am proudest that I had a chance to coach never ever won a tournament, never even made it to a final round. Went to every tournament for 4 years. But he went from being incapable of expressing himself to being able to stand up and give a pretty okay speech in front of a group of adults. That's what this is about. So take notes on this. The student, when they are done, will say thank you. Done. Do not have a conversation with them. Do not give them an oral discussion of how they did, and they shouldn't ask you any questions. If you think there's a rules violation, don't have a discussion with the kid. Make a note and bring it to the folks in the physical tab room, the tournament command, and explain it. The kids as well, if they think that there's a problem or that you messed up some time signals or something, the instructions they have are they bring it to me, and then I take it from them and elevate it to whoever it needs to get elevated to or not. The one question they're allowed to ask you is, please, what was my time? That's why you're keeping track of it. If they went overtime, they went 7:31, you can't rank them first. If they did not, they still are going to want to know their time because they're learning to pace themselves. So they want to know, did I still have another minute left, or how close did I come? That kid will then leave. A few minutes later, the second kid will walk into the room and you'll do the same thing. I try to space them out in 10-minute intervals. So the kid speaks for up to 7 minutes. You'll have 2-3 minutes between them to get yourself resettled. After the second kid speaks, this is the trick of how you do this. Was that kid better or not as good as the first? Make a note. You have your first and second place now. Third kid walks in. You go through the same routine. Were they the best, the least best, or in the middle? Now you've got your 1, 2, 3. You rank them as you go, because if you wait till the end and say, all right, I'm going to see everybody and then I'm going to meditate on this, you will not remember what the first kid said. It will be impossible for you to write that ballot. You have to do it as you go. It's the only way to keep yourself sane and do it right. You also, if you're new, many of you are new to this, and if you're not a teacher who's used to grading a lot of essays, pull the trigger. You can sit and agonize and torture yourself, and is it really a 2 or a 3? Is this kid better? And believe me, it's not worth it. You are not the only judge of the day. The student will do this for 3 rounds at least, with 3 different questions in front of 3 different judges in rooms with 3 different sets of other kids. We scramble everybody up. So you are only one voice and one rank for the day. And I can tell you as a teacher, the first year I was teaching, I gave all the kids a big essay test. I spent a week agonizing over every kid's essay and what I should have given them and should I give them, and before I got done grading. The following week, I gave them another essay test. I went through it very rapidly and gave the kids kind of gut numbers. Then I went back and remarked them all in detail and agonized. And you know what? 95% of them, I did not change the original number. And the other ones, it varied by, a point or two. So your gut is pretty good. Were you moved by the argument? How well do you feel the kid communicated? And go with that gut to do that rank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As far as the rating goes, and Frank will talk about this again, I'm sure, you're grading the kid out of 100. Basically, we say, unless the kid has a massive rules violation, try not to give them less than an 80. I know it seems a little inflated, but this is kind of the custom. Don't give them 100, no matter how good they are, please, because a kid needs to be coachable. So they have to know that there's somewhere to go up. Even if they are fantastic, that's a 98, maybe occasionally a 99. The easiest thing to do is gut instinct. The best kid in the room for that round, where would you put him? A 95, a 96, a 98, 92, not so hot. The worst kid in the round, where would you put him? 81, 82, 85. And then space out the kids between the best and the worst in some way that makes sense. Don't worry too much about those ratings out of 100. They are far less important in calculating, the trophies and medals and all that for the kids. And you will have time later to revise that critique that you're writing about the notes that you're writing to the kid. So getting the ranks in very fast is important. And then if you have a little time later, you can go back and edit some of your notes. When you do this, you will see kids who are varsity and kids who are JV. Varsity students are more experienced. They will speak with nothing. JV students, junior varsity, are the younger kids, and they tend to be the less experienced kids. Those kids are permitted, but do not have to, use a physical notes. We used to use an index card. Some of the kids use a half sheet of paper or something. Physical notes, 50 words or fewer on it. We instruct the kids to give you their notes after they're done. We want them to know they're being held accountable for following the rules. So if you think that there are more than 50 words on that, please bring that to the Tabroom, the tournament command, and let us make that evaluation and count them up. And if there's a rules violation, we'll deal with it. If you think a kid goes overtime and you can't rank them first, I encourage you, take that also to the Tabroom, just so that the Frank and the other people who are doing the numbers are aware that that's going to be an issue and they have to take account of that. Let me say, by the way, if the kid would have been third and they go overtime, they stay third. It doesn't make a difference. The only penalty is if they would have been one, they can't be one, they have to be two. I have posted in the chat 2 documents for your delight and entertainment. One is called How to Judge Extemp. It is a 3-page crib sheet of cheat notes that I hope is a helpful bullet point kind of thing to help you get the hang of this. The other is a set of the full tournament questions, all 4 rounds, because the kids change question every round. They redraw from one of our most recent tournaments, the UMcAvoy, so that you can get a look at like what are these questions the kids are going to be asking, what is this going to look like, what is it going to sound like. If you make a mistake, don't panic. If you screw up the time signals, it happens. Do not take a penalty against the kid if you made the error. That's a lot of talking I've done, but hopefully it's kind of set you up for extemp and maybe some basics to get you through the other rounds. Before I turn it back over to Frank, anybody have a question, problem, issue?
Good evening. My name is Penny. I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Franz, firstly. My question is, did you say at the start of their speech, they tell you, they state the question?
Yes, part of their speech. They should know the question. You have it in front of you on paper, but they have to say the question. So they'll give you an analogy or a an anecdote or some introduction, and then they'll wind up with, and so this leads us to the question, who will win the war in Ukraine? Well, to answer this question, we have to look at three areas of analysis. So they should state the question at the beginning or toward the beginning of the speech.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I have one other question, which is about timing. I'm worried about concentrating on the student and getting lost and doing the timing and getting behind with that. Do you have any tips on that?
You just, it's going to sound like a cop out. You just have to get used to it. The timing is critical for extemp. And so you have to have that stopwatch or your phone, whatever you're using in front of you. And you have to kind of keep one eye on it. When you hit that, 5 minutes left, you want to get the hand up. It just has to be long enough for the kid to see it. And I think use a countdown stopwatch. So if you can get one of the gadgets, there are plenty of apps and stuff out there, and there's stuff online that you can set for 7 minutes, and that will go over time. So we'll count down from 7 minutes. Then you just have to glance at that. 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left. It gets down to 7 minutes, and then it should keep going so that you know if the kid goes 7:31. But if you get a countdown version of it, that's the easiest thing I can think of to do.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have two questions, sorry. Does the countdown start when they start speaking or when
Yes.
Oh,
The student is once you give the kid a nod, you should get yourself set, and you give the kid a kind of nod to let him know whenever he's ready or she's ready. I'm sorry to keep saying that. I teach in an all-guys school. As soon as the student is ready, they begin speaking when they want to, and that's when their time starts.
and second is that what happens when they speak on a topic that you're familiar with and you don't agree with their
Very important point that I should have brought up. You have no opinions. The question is never whether you agree with the student or you like what they say. The only question is, how well does the student make their case? So you should leave all of your own ideas, political opinions, all of that is at the door. You may be a screaming MAGA red hat wearing person, and this person comes in and gives a speech about how Kamala Harris deserves the Nobel Prize and the Pulitzer Prize and sainthood. The question is never whether you think they're right. The question is whether they make a case for what they're saying. If you are an expert in the field, so the kid is giving an analysis of a Supreme Court case and you happen to be an attorney that specializes in appeals, great. Again, it's whether the kid makes the best case in the context that the kid is making the case. But if you can give the kid a pointer or two in that critique and say, hey, by the way, you really should think about this, or let me tell you, this case really means that. But the kids are not expected to be, they're expected to be lay experts in their subjects, if you know what I mean. But it's very important to leave all of your own prejudices, attitudes at the door, and they should never be mentioned in the critique. I'm surprised to see a young man who's so intelligent, who's a supporter of, John Smith because he stinks. Well, no, that doesn't belong there. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anna. I have a question about the timing. Is there a mandatory requirement to give the student the time that they took to speak?
They will ask for it. So at the end of the speech, When the kid is done, thank you very much. If you want to tell them the time, that's perfectly okay. They will usually ask you, please, can I know what my time is? And it's if they don't, again, I think it's best if you note it in that critique. Just stick it in there someplace. Tell the kid, oh, you went 6:31, just so the kid knows. Again, they're trying to get used to, particularly the younger guys, are trying to get used to pacing themselves.
Okay, thank you.
We have somebody else?
So you should have a silent timer, all right,
Yes.
so that it doesn't go off at the end, right? Okay.
Yeah, to try to avoid, because the kids get really rattled really easily by distractions.
I have a question. Are we gonna get instructions on how to use Tabroom in
Yep.
general and
All
how
of
to do
that,
all
yes.
this?
As soon as we get done with this, Frank is going to take you through the other categories, and Frank is the tech expert and guru who controls the internet with the power of his mind. So he will walk you through how to use the tab room, the computer program, and all that.
Okay, thank you. And another question. So for instance, my kid who will be competing is in extemp, but I'm as a judge, I may or may not be judging that category, right?
Yes, so there is no such thing as a quote extemp judge. There are speech judges. You will probably only be judging one round of extemp in a day. You might judge two, but you'll also be judging a round of drama and a round of OI. You will not see your own son, and normally you will not see kids from the school that your child attends.
Got it.
So Frank can set up the program to constrain against you and against the school. Sometimes we have same school judging, but we try to avoid it. But certainly we don't have same family judging. However, you will be mixed. You will see, if you do 3 rounds or 4 rounds on Saturday, you will see probably 4 different categories of competition.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Doesn't seem like it.
Great.
So thank you, and
Take it
I'll
away,
take it
Frank.
from here. So what we've just gone through is extemporaneous speaking. It's one of the few events where the students get to decide what they're going to tell you. And as Chris mentioned, you're evaluating their argument, how well they make their case. The next event I'm going to talk about is my personal favorite, which is original oratory. This is another event in which the students are giving you their own words. So the idea with original oratory is the students have prepared a speech, and it is not required to be a persuasive speech. It will typically be either a persuasive or an informative speech. It is 10 minutes long as opposed to 7 minutes. And they are trying to convince you of whatever their idea is, or they are trying to educate you about some subject that they are passionate about, or they're trying to advocate for some position that they believe is very important. This is their own words, so you are listening to both how well they present themselves as well as how well their speech is constructed. You can think of it as if you are an English teacher grading an essay, giving them feedback on how their material works, how their transitions from one point to another work, how they're able to grab your attention. They will also typically be citing evidence. It's a little bit less academic maybe than extemp. They might not be citing so many news articles or scientific studies, but they should be quoting experts in the field of what they're talking about and giving you some basis for why they are presenting what they're presenting. You are able to, at the end, give them feedback on both how they spoke and what the content of their speech was. Similar to extemp, you are not judging them on whether you agree with their speech at the end of it, but you're trying to give them feedback on how well they communicated their message. Typically, they will try to be entertaining. Very often, original oratory will include some levels of jokes and other things to grab your attention. It is not a stand-up comedy routine. The idea is not that you should be in constant laughter throughout, although they may be very entertaining, and certainly feel free to chuckle as they're speaking and give them a good experience as their audience. But in the end, you're judging them on the overall picture, not this kid was funnier than this other kid, therefore they win, or this one was way too serious, I'm going to put them at the bottom of the rankings. You are looking at the overall performance of how well they conveyed everything, what they were able to convince you of by the end of it, what you learned as a result of hearing them speak. So that is original oratory. The mechanics of it, the main difference between all of the other events I'm going to go through versus extemporaneous speaking is, in general, the students will all be there at the same time. They will all sit there and listen to each other perform, as opposed to extemp, where they'll come to you one at a time. So they'll have an audience that's not just you. And part of what we're teaching them in this event is to use the audience to their advantage. They should be making eye contact with other audience members, involving the other audience members as far as not just speaking directly into your eyes as the judge, but pulling in the entire audience. And typically there'll be a feeling of energy that you get from having a large audience, that you can see a good speaker feeding off of that energy and bringing it into their performance. So extemporaneous speaking and original oratory are the only events in which the students have composed their own material. So those are the only events in which you are able to critique their own material. The next events I'm going to go through are called so-called interpretive events. In these cases, students are performing material that someone else has written. You are not supposed to judge the material, how much you like the material, whether you think the material is difficult or less difficult than what another student is performing. You are, in these other events, critiquing their interpretation of this material. And even if you don't necessarily have a theater or performing background, everyone here, I'm sure you've watched movies or TV shows or plays. At the end of that, you're able to sit there and say, huh, I really like that because XYZ, or, I didn't really care for that because XYZ. You are able to make those sorts of subjective criticisms of a piece of media. You will be able to judge any of these interpretive events. So I'll start with an event called oral interpretation of literature. Oral interpretation of literature is a reading event. So students will have a binder, and their material is in that binder. They should refer to that binder as they're going through in order to convey everything. And they will have two pieces that they will be performing throughout the day. One is a piece of prose, one is a piece of poetry, and they will alternate between those each round. Each student in the round will be performing the same thing. So what we do at the beginning of the day is we'll flip a coin and we'll say round one is prose or round one is poetry, which means if round one is prose, then round two is poetry, round three is prose again, and the final round will be poetry. So they alternate back to back. These days, the trends in poetry have been a lot of free verse and things that it's somewhat difficult to tell the difference between prose and poetry. We ask that you, if you have some concerns about any material they may be performing, rank the round as you see it based on their performance and bring those concerns to us in the tournament office. We'll investigate whether what they're performing is a legal piece or not. So again, they will have a binder. Typically, it's a little small handheld binder. They should have a, quote, balance between referring to the binder and referring to the audience. What does that mean? It's intentionally left vague. So you as a judge can say, oh, you were looking in this binder the whole time. You never looked up once. That was a little bit distracting. Or maybe you say, you were holding this binder. You might as well have had it closed because you never referred to it. That was a little bit distracting. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be specifically 50-50 looking at the binder, looking at the audience. So that's something you can evaluate the students on, how well they incorporate the binder. Some of them are very clever and they may use the binder as a prop. Like if they have a scene that's taking place in a car, they might use the binder as a steering wheel. Sometimes if they're doing, for example, it's around Halloween time, maybe one of them is performing some kind of a suspenseful or horror piece, they might dramatically turn pages to make the flip of the page almost a sound effect to convey some emotion. So you can critique them on how well they use that binder. The majority of what you're focused on for this event, though, should be in their vocal delivery. Some of the other events that I'll get to in a moment are a lot more physical, and you will have students really walking around and doing all sorts of crazy physical activity. Oral interpretation is typically much more stationary. They shouldn't be walking around. They will be standing at the front of the room, plant themselves, reading from the book. They might take some physicality differences to make it easy to tell if they're, say, there's a narrator and several characters. They might form themselves into different physical postures. So if you can tell each character apart, they might use voices, different voices or accents to distinguish one character from another. And all of that are things you should look at how well they are performing this piece. How well do they make you forget that you're actually watching a student standing in front of you holding a book and feel more like your childhood story time at the library with the librarian reading to you and entertaining you and keeping you engaged. What you're evaluating them on is how well do they transport you into the world of that story. And you can give them feedback like, I think something you were doing worked really well. You really made me feel these characters were real people. Or maybe you tried to do some voices, but they all sounded a little bit too similar to one another. It was hard for me to tell who was speaking. So those are the types of things you're looking at. You can tell them in general, you were going way too fast. I couldn't follow this story that you were telling. Maybe they were going way too slowly, and it was a little bit, you found yourself drifting a little bit and hard to keep your attention because they weren't engaging the audience. Their goal should be to draw you in and make you transfixed by their performance. As with the original oratory, this is a 10-minute event. And I should have mentioned with oratory, for the 10-minute events, there is still a 30-second grace period. So if they speak for 10 minutes and 25 seconds, that's fine. If they speak for 10 minutes and 31 seconds or more, they cannot be ranked first. There's no other penalty. They just can't be ranked first in the round if they go over time. Moving on from original oratory to dramatic performance. Dramatic performance is one of the most free events. They will not have a binder. They are standing in front of you performing a 10-minute excerpt from a play or something like that, a play, a novel. They are memorized, so they will not be referring to any script. And they will be imbuing these characters to the full extent of their ability. They may be performing a single monologue of one character. They might be performing a zany comedy of 15 different characters, all quickly transitioning from one to another. And they'll do what's called popping, where they'll very much transform their body and their voice between one character to another as if they're having a conversation with themselves. And they might look over here and talking and then respond as another character looking over there. They might be walking around the room. In some very energetic performances, they might be making sound effects and doing backflips and doing any sorts of things that they can do with their young bodies to convey this frenetic energy. It is going to be a mix. Some events, if you end up traveling to some of the invitationals, some tournaments will split out what's called dramatic interpretation from humorous interpretation. In our NYCFL local league, we combine those both into one category called dramatic performance. So you might see some hilarious things. You might see some things that make you want to cry. You might see some dramedies that are in between. There might be some really serious moments and some really lighthearted moments. Again, we are not judging what their material is and whether you like their material. You are judging how well they bring you into the world of this play. And even more so than when they're speaking with the binder in oral interpretation, you should feel transported. And a really good performer will make you feel like you were watching someone up on a Broadway stage and not standing in front of a classroom. The same types of interpretive choices that you critiqued in oral interp will apply here, as well as all the things they're doing physically and how well that works to suit the piece. They'll typically do pantomimes. So for a common thing is maybe as they're talking to you, they're folding laundry, or they're opening a door and walking into the house, noticing you as the audience and start speaking to you then. You want to evaluate how well that pantomime works. Can you tell what they're doing? Are they just wildly moving their hands, or can you tell that they're actually folding laundry or baking a cake or reading a book or opening a door? how well they convey to you with their bodies what's going on. They're not allowed to use any kind of props. They're not allowed to use any kind of costumes. So everything that they're doing in the performance is pantomime, and you can certainly evaluate how well that works to suit what they're trying to convey. Moving on from dramatic performance, the next most complicated category is duo performance. Everything I just said about dramatic performance applies to duo, except now, as the name implies, there are two people, and they are performing in front of you as a pair working together. Duo is a little bit strange if you're used to watching acting, because one of the rules is they are not allowed to look each other in the eye, and they are not allowed to make physical contact with each other except during the introduction or any transitional material. So if they're performing something from their script, they have to either face out to the audience, or sometimes they will be very clever about cheating. So one might be looking to just past each other so they don't actually meet their eyes. They might be, if they're giving each other a handshake, you'll see their hands will just be a couple of inches apart from each other. They're very clever with how they stage things, but the rule is they cannot directly look each other in the eye, and they cannot directly make physical contact with each other. What's interesting about duo, because you have two people, they should be equally balanced in how they're performing the material, and they should be doing things that you couldn't do in one of the one-person events. So what that means is if I'm speaking and my partner is in the scene, my partner should be reacting to me and should be actively engaged in the scene, even if they're not the one that has lines. Typically, you'll also see them occasionally you'll see things where maybe one partner is making sound effects or making transitional noises in the background while one is speaking. They might, a few years ago in the Nationals final rounds, someone was doing James and the Giant Peach. And of course, one of the characters in James and the Giant Peach is a spider. So you had the four kids standing in front of each other, making the 8 legs of a spider by the way they were standing. So they will get very creative with the way that they're staging this. And that is definitely something that you can criticize and say, ooh, that was really clever what you did with your arms and legs to make this spider shape. Or I don't understand why you were flailing around with your arms there. I think maybe you were going for being a spider, but it just didn't really work the way you were going for. So again, you're trying to tell them what worked, what didn't work about their performance. And definitely you can say, you, the taller partner, maybe you kind of dominated this performance. You should work on a way to let the other speaker have some more stage time or be more engaged in the scene. And I do like to think about in duo, what are the things that you could only do because you have that extra person? And if it's really just two people trading off of a monologue, that's not as effective as a performance as if they're really playing off of each other and creating something that only two people could create. Moving on from that, we have another event that's really a training ground kind of an event. It's not exactly an interpretive event the same way the other two are. It is called declamation. And that is an event that is only for freshmen and sophomores, and it is really to teach them the core mechanics of speaking. In declamation, they are memorizing a speech that was made by someone else, and this is specifically a speech now, not a play, not a work of fiction, but a speech that was given at some kind of an event. Common examples include things like commencement speeches. TED Talks are common for this. They may perform an original oratory that was written by a student several years ago. And we're really looking at not them becoming a character. So if they're giving a speech like from Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech, they shouldn't be acting like Martin Luther King and taking on his persona, but they should be bringing these words to life using their own freshman and sophomore bodies and really learning how to hold a room, how to grab everyone's attention. how to memorize the speech and keep their place as they're going through, how to engage the audience, how to use things like eye contact and pace variation, how to use techniques like getting louder, getting softer, effective pauses, things to make the speech more dynamic. And that's really what you're looking for here. How well they capture your attention, how well they convey this other person's words. It is not their own words, so you shouldn't be complaining about what they're saying or critiquing what they're saying, but you are very much looking at how they say it. Do they understand what they're saying? If they're reading some commencement speech from an actor who's had years of world experience and life experience, obviously as a student, as a 14-year-old, they do not have 30, 40 years of world experience, but they should be able to convince you almost as if they do. They should be internalizing something about the words of this speaker and making it their own. And the final event, which is a blend of, I don't want to exactly call it persuasion, but it is an interpretive event where the students are trying to make a particular case, and we call that programmed oral interp. Similar to the first oral interp prose poetry event that I told you, they are again performing from a binder, but we are much freer here in terms of what material they're allowed to include in this. And then what they will do is they will splice together poems, speeches, essays, prose, dramatic works, song lyrics, anything and everything pretty much goes here. And the point of this program is to unite all of those pieces of material by a common theme. It's not a requirement, but it is very typical that students producing one of these programs will focus on something like a social justice issue and try to make you feel something about that issue as a way of combining all of the materials together. An example from one of the recent nationals, there was a program about girls participating in speech and debate, and they brought in some news articles about some unfortunate instances of sexism in the activity and things like that. And the idea was, at the end of it, you really wanted to feel like, yes, this is a real problem, and we want to make this world a better place for these students who are participating in this activity. So you aren't judging the material here because, again, they didn't write it themselves, but you are judging how they put the program together. They will be very creative and they'll do some very impressive things, the way they splice things together to take some pre-existing words and create almost something new and unique out of that material. So you're looking at how well everything flows. Are you able to easily follow when they're moving from one piece of material to another? Do the transitions suit their program? Do their choices of materials suit whatever theme they're trying to make you appreciate by the end of it? It is also an interpretive event, so the same things about speaking style and ability to hold the room and ability to convey different emotions and convey different themes and feelings through their voice and physicality apply. They are also able to use the binder as a prop. So how well they're able to incorporate the binder into their presentation is something you can evaluate. And in general, all of these criteria are things you can evaluate, and it's up to you as the judge to decide how you want to weigh all of those things. So I'll just close with, I've given you a lot of different criteria for all of the events. What I'll share with you, the official rules of each of the event. We have a manual that you can refer back to. This is an inherently subjective activity. It's not like a sport where either the ball goes into the basket or it doesn't. It's not even like something like ice skating where there are specific movements that you award points for. Every judge will come in here with their own opinions of what's important, what's good, what's bad. There is no such thing as a wrong way to judge the round. Okay. Don't stand in front of them and say, I like you because I like the red tie that you're wearing. I'm going to rank you above because of that. Don't judge on superficial things like that. But within reason, if you can justify your ranking, there is no wrong way to judge around. I might sit there and say, oh, I used to do oratory as an event. I'm really interested in how the speech is constructed. So those are the types of things that I might weigh more heavily. Whereas you sitting and watching the same 6 kids, maybe you don't have a background in writing, you have more of an interest in how well the student is speaking. And you might say this person was so much more fluid than everyone else and was it really able to command the room, and you might rank that person higher even if someone else might have had a better written speech. All of that is valid, and anything you bring to these rounds is valid. The most important lesson the students are learning here is how to adapt to many different types of audiences. So anything you can give them in the way of feedback and how you saw the round is helpful, because they're trying to learn how to be widely appealing to a lot of different types of viewpoints. So I'll leave you with that one core piece of advice, that there is no wrong way to judge. So I ran through a lot of categories very quickly. I'll once again open things up for questions, and then once we're done with this, I'll move on to the last piece of tonight, which is all the technical logistics of how to use Tabroom. But if there are any questions, please feel free to speak up.
Yes, I have a question, please.
Sure.
I think I heard the other gentleman said that if we need to revise our comments, we can do so.
Mhm.
When is the latest we can revise our comments?
Sure. So we will ask you, and I'll go over this when I speak about Tabroom in a bit more detail, but we ask that you get your decisions in as soon as possible after the last student has spoken, like within 5 or 10 minutes of the last student speaking. But your comments up until the award ceremony. So typically the award ceremony will be about 4 p.m., 4:30. Up until then, you can revise your comments as much as you'd like.
And what about if I make a mistake on the ranking? When can I change my rankings?
Hopefully you shouldn't make a mistake, and the software does give you a chance to double check your work before you submit it. If you realize afterwards that you really did make a mistake and you need to fix something, you need to come talk to us in the tournament office. It's not something that you're able to fix for yourself.
Okay.
So we'll post where the tournament office is, how you find us, how you contact us.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you so much.
Sure. Other questions?
I have a question for a couple of them. So for original oratory, are there particular types of topics? Extemp is current events. What is original oratory?
Anything and everything. So it's really some subject that the student is passionate about. And like back in my day when I was competing, you maybe would get 5 different speeches all about how bad peer pressure is or something like that. But you might also get something really unique. Like my speech at the time was the importance of foreign language education in schools. You might get things about Julie, who usually does these trainings, talks about a speech where a student's mother had passed away, and she gave a eulogy for her mother. And it's a really wide range of things that they feel very strongly about and want to give voice to. This is really the one place in this activity where we really give students their own voice and the ability to say whatever they want to say.
Okay, thank you. My other questions are the materials for all the others, like oral interpretation of literature, the dramatic, the duo, are those student selected texts, and like they're not given to them, right? They select what they want to do.
It's a blend. It's a blend. So especially if you're judging a freshman or a sophomore, typically they'll walk into the room, say, hey, what is this speech and debate activity? How do I get involved? The coach will hand them a piece of paper and say, hey, or memorize this and perform it this Saturday. That's common. Some of the more advanced students, especially once you get into the junior and senior year, the ones who really are invested in this activity and become competitive, they might be interested in what's called cutting their own piece. So typically everything we're doing here is 10 minutes long. So something needs to take a play that might be 30 minutes long, 2 hours long or something like that, shave it down to 10 minutes. Some students will do that themselves. Some students will rely on their coaches. Some students will do a blend of they'll take a first pass at it and they'll continue to revise and work on that cutting with their coaches. It is not student written material, though. It's published material, and there are rules in our bylaws about what constitutes published material.
And if I can
Oh,
just say, Frank,
okay.
in extemp, we write the questions. And if you ever do debate, like public forum debate, which you may do someday, we, that is the league, comes up with the resolution. As Frank said, in original oratory, the kid comes up with the topic themselves, and then the others, we don't do that, but the coach may have handed it to the kid, which is why you don't hold the coach's choice against the kid if you don't like the choice.
I have one more question. Sorry to
Sure.
dominate
No,
the,
by
the
all means.
conversation. But, so when it's a speech, like for example, with the programmed oral interpretation that the student is given to perform, does judge have it in front to like check if it's accurate, or like
No,
if the kid goes off of the script a little bit, you're still looking at the overall performance?
you're just looking at the overall performance. Once in a
Okay.
while, we'll get something, especially when you get later in the year and you're getting to some of the more intensive tournaments. Like let's say, for example, that you're someone who does community theater and you know Putnam County Spelling Bee like the back of your hand, and the kid gets up there and performs Putnam County Spelling Bee, and you say, that's not right. They changed something. Don't take it upon yourself to ever disqualify a student or anything like that. Rank them as if they did everything perfectly right, and then come talk to us in the tournament office and say, hey, I think something in this material has been changed in a way that's not rules legal. We in the office will make that decision. Never take it upon yourself as a judge to um, again use your outside knowledge to evaluate whether the student did something right or wrong in your critiques.
Thank you.
All great questions, though. Anyone else? Okay, not hearing any. So I know we've been with you quite some time. I just need a few more minutes of your time to go through some important technical details. Let me share my screen. So the first thing I will share with you, and I'll put all these links into the chat as well, is the NYCFL.org website. So this is our homepage where there's a lot of useful resources. And if you scroll down here, we'll have lists of upcoming tournaments. And many of the important resources are down here under resources, including the judge manual, which I'll also put a direct link into the chat, and many other things like the guides for judging extemp, the guide for judging debate, so on and so forth. The other very important website. So you heard we mentioned a place called the Tabroom. That stands for tabulation room, and it's how we refer to the tournament office. But there's also Tabroom, the website. And this is what we use to conduct the tournaments. If you have not done so already, we ask that you create an account on tabroom.com. I'm logged in right now, but if I wasn't logged in, right here, there would be a link that says sign up. You can click that link, fill in your email, phone number, name, and so on, and then let your coach know what email address that you used to sign up for Tabroom. Then the coach is able to take your email address and associate it with someone on their judges roster so that when they sign you up to judge, it will be linked to your Tabroom account. The other important document that we'll share with you for each tournament is something we call the live doc. So I'm not going to put this link into the chat because this is actually from last weekend. We'll make these available usually the Friday before the tournament. So we don't have the live doc yet for this weekend, but this is an example of what one looked like for last weekend. We'll have some information about the school. So at the last tournament, we were in Xavier High School. Here's the address. As I mentioned, we'll put our contact information on here. This is actually my phone number. You don't have to copy it down now. It'll be in the live doc when we distribute that. And we'll have how to get onto the internet at the school. Things in here, let's skip past awards, things in here like this, the schedule, when each of the rounds is. And you can look through here, as well as some important events. We call this a live doc because this is a shared Google Doc. We will update this throughout the day, and we might put important announcements at the top of this document. So we encourage you to have this open and periodically refer back to it throughout the day. We will also include a link on the live doc to what we call the judge chart. And this, again, this is from a previous weekend, but just to give you a sense of what one of these will look like, we'll have sorted by name which rounds you should expect to be judging. Typically, we'll try to give everyone at least 2 rounds. Some judges might have 3. If you're from one of the larger schools, so you're here from Stuyvesant, Regis, or Bronx Science, you have a lot of students, and because you're not allowed to let you judge your own students, those judges might find that they'll have more rounds off just because we physically can't fit you into those rounds without causing conflicts. But you'll get a sense of what you're judging that day. This is subject to change. So we will put this out in the morning to give you a sense of what your obligation for that day is, but this is not the be all and end all of your schedule. If you are judging for the weekend, we expect that you're available for all of the rounds that day. We may adjust this throughout as people go missing, or maybe there's an unreported conflict. So Paul goes into the room and sees, oh, I can't judge this person. They're my best friend's son or something like that. We might have to substitute Paul out for someone else that will say that like this person would have been on standby for that round. So we might need to do replacements throughout the day, but this gives you a sense of what your day is. And each of these abbreviations, these are just the abbreviations for the events. So like OO is original oratory, DEC is declamation, OI is oral interp, so on and so forth. These numbers, I always get the question of what these numbers mean. From your point of view, they're irrelevant. They don't mean anything. But this is the round, so everything in this column will have a 1 because it's round 1. And then the second number is the section. This number is really meaningless to anyone but us in the tournament office. It's analogous to which room you're in, but this is not a room number. You'll find out what room number you have when the actual ballot is sent to you. So I'll show you an example of what a ballot looks like. This link I will share. This is a demo site that I set up to help you get experience with what Tabroom looks like. You can click around this website, fill in pieces of the ballot. Nothing you do in this page will go anywhere. It's just for you to get practice using the system. So we'll release ballots to you one at a time. The first ballot, typically, if you look at the schedule, typically there'll be an opening meeting to start the day. Those will just be some important announcements for judges. And when that meeting is over, we'll release your first ballot. After that, we release the ballots usually half an hour before the scheduled start time. So if the round is going to be at 11:30, you'll have that ballot by 11. The ballot will have a green button on it. The text of this button might change from one tournament to another. Sometimes it will say on my way. Sometimes it will say acknowledge. Sometimes it will say start. Regardless of what that button says, as soon as you see this page, this thing come up in your Tabroom account, press that button. What we have in the tournament office is a list of every judge's name and a little check mark next to you. And as you click that button, the check mark turns green. And that lets us know that you have a ballot and that you're on your way. As we get closer to 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock when the round is starting, we start panicking when we see judges who we don't have a little green check mark next to. And that's when we might try texting you or calling you, trying to frantically find out where you are. And if we can't get a hold of you, the round needs to start at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever the time is. So we might end up substituting in another judge. And if we have to do that, there is a fine to your school. So we'll charge a fee to your school because you went missing. So we really don't want that to happen. We don't want your money. We want the round to happen on time. So pressing this button is the signal to us that says, yes, I know I'm supposed to be somewhere and I'm on my way. And we're tracking that in the tournament office. What else you'll see on here, what event you're judging. So this abbreviation stands for online ballot training, but typically it would be one of those other events like OO, OI, VX, JVX. We'll say what room you're going to. This weekend, we're in the Bronx High School of Science. It's a relatively intuitive, it's a big school, but it's a relatively intuitive school to navigate. You'll get a room like 112, which will be on the first floor, or 312 on the third floor. And there's signs on every corner of the hallways, which rooms are down this part of the hallway, which rooms are down that part of the hallway. So tell you what room you're going to. We'll have the start time, and then will be a list of which speakers are in your section. And on this page, every speaker is given a speaker code, and that's to preserve some level of anonymity in the tournament. So the student will know what their codes are. And from here, you'll just see, oh, I'm judging 6 students, or you might be judging just 5 students, or you might be judging 7. Depending on the size of your room, you'll see how many students you're judging and this list of codes. When you click the green button, that will take you into the ballot proper. And here you'll see their codes and you'll see their names. There's a place where you can put in the title if they're in one of the interpretive events, or the question if they're in extemp, how you submit your ranks, and we'll get to that later. The first thing you should do, and if you're judging one of the events where all the students come to you at once, it's easy. You can take attendance. Check that if you have 6 students sitting in the room, that the 6 students sitting in the room are these 6 students. And you can check by both code and name, just make sure that the right people are there. If, say, there's 6 people on your ballot and 7 students in the room, that 7th student is in the wrong place. You should let them know that as soon as possible so that they can check with their coach or try to figure out where they really should go. You must judge these 6 students on your ballot and no one else instead of those 6. And definitely check names and codes. At the Bronx Science Tournament last year, we had a very fun experience where 2 kids went to the wrong room because their codes were 251 and 215, and they just transposed those 2 numbers. And ironically, the rooms they were going to were right next to each other. So like room 123 and 124. And there was a sign on the hallway that was a little bit confusing, that they weren't sure which room they were supposed to be in. And because the judge didn't take attendance, we had to then end up rerunning part of that round to get everyone in the right places. It is very important that you judge exactly the students that are assigned to you because of the way we have everything shuffled around to give every kid a fair chance and an equal balance of who's judging them and who they're being paired against. At the bottom of the screen is the place where you can give your feedback. When you first open the ballot, there's a place for feedback for everyone. We don't tend to use this box too much in speech. You can write some general comments in here about the round and say, great job, everyone. As a judge, these are the types of things I look for, so on and so forth. Typically, I don't write much in here if I'm judging a speech round. The majority of what you write is going to be aimed at each individual student. So as Sylvia is speaking, you can select Sylvia from this menu, and then what you type into this box will just go to Sylvia and Sylvia's coaches. I strongly recommend that you write your ballots in something like Word or Google Doc or Notepad, something that isn't this website, just so you have a backup copy. School Wi-Fi is finicky. Some of these schools are very old and the cinder blocks interfere with the wireless signal. So you'll type up beautiful comments, paragraphs of notes for your students, go to click save. The internet will have a momentary hiccup and all your carefully crafted comments disappear in the ether. We don't want that to happen. Your comments are important to the students. They need to get your feedback to grow in this activity. So I strongly recommend that you take your notes somewhere else, and then when the student's done, copy and paste into this box, and then you can save. And if the internet blips out and your save doesn't work, then you can just copy and paste again and click save and get all your feedback to the students. So each student will speak. You can toggle through each of the students, give them their feedback. At the end of the round, you will give them their ranks. There are no ties in ranks. So if there are 6 students, you need to give ranks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in some reasonable order. And you need to give points that correspond to those ranks. You can't give students, like you couldn't give, let's say, Sylvia a rank 1st, Carlos a rank 2, but give Sylvia less point or fewer points than you give to Carlos. The points in the ranks should move together. For illustration purposes, I'm just going to make up some ranks here and some points. Let's say we thought Carlos was the best in the room. By the way, ranks are smallest is better. So the person you think was best in the round, you're giving the 1. The person you think was second best, you'll give the 2. The person you think was least best in the room, you'll give the 6. So I'll just say that Carlos was our 1, maybe Fletcher was our 2, Sylvia was our 3, Dulcie was our 4, Christopher was our 5, and Joy was our 6. And we'll give some points that go along with that. For example, maybe we thought this was a very strong round, and we'll give Carlos 98 points. And maybe Carlos and Fletcher were really close to one another. You had a really hard time making that decision, so you can give them very close points. You can't give them the same number of points, but you can say maybe Carlos was a 98, Fletcher was a 97. And on the back page of that judge manual, there is a rubric to give you some guidelines on how to evaluate these numbers. Maybe there's a bigger gap between Fletcher and third place. So maybe now we jump down to say 94. And then down to our fourth place. Maybe these were also very close. So this is maybe a 92. And then there's another jump. It was very easy to tell your bottom 2 of the round, maybe. And we can say that this was maybe an 88 and an 86. Again, this is just for illustration purposes. You can read through the rubric at the back of the judging manual to get a sense of how to come up with these numbers. Once you're done filling out your ballot, you can submit it. And you're not done yet. You have not yet submitted your ballot. It's going to ask you to confirm your ranking. And something that trips people up when they're seeing this screen for the first time is it is no longer sorting them in the order they spoke. By default, it's sorting them in the order that you ranked them. So you'll look at this and say, oh, that doesn't look right. But now your ranks are here on the left and the order they spoke is here on the right. And you can get a chance to double check this. Yes, definitely Carlos was the best in that round. Fletcher was second best. Sylvia was third best, so on to Joy. Maybe as you're looking at this, Chris said at the beginning, don't overthink the rankings, but you might come to this screen and say, you know, it was just so close between Sylvia and Dulcie. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I do want to put Dulcie above Sylvia. While you're on this screen, you can click the red button, come back here and fix your ballot. So maybe we can say, no, Dulcie is third, Sylvia is fourth. And of course, you have to adjust the points accordingly. So Sylvia is third with a 94. Dulcie is third with a 94. And now Sylvia is 2 with a 92. Once again, you can click Submit Ballot. And you can click Yes, the green button, Yes, Confirm. At that point, your obligation is done for this round. Once again, we in the tournament office will have a checklist of all the judges who have not turned in their ballots yet. And if we're getting really, the round should last about an hour long. If we're getting to that hour and 10 minutes, hour and 15, you might get one of us trying to chase you down in the school or try texting you or calling you saying, hey, we really need your scores. You don't need to finish your feedback. You can go back and edit your comments at any point, but we do need your scores as soon as possible after each round. That's how we're able to monitor that the tournament is going well. And eventually, especially after the third round, we'll decide which judges are judging the final round. And we need to have all the scores in order to calculate everything and decide which students are advancing. Speaking of final rounds, one thing I should mention, in preliminary rounds, there is one judge. And that one judge is the only one evaluating that round. But students will have 3 rounds back-to-back where they'll be seen by 3 different judges. In the final round, to make things a little bit more fair, because it's a much more important round, we will typically have a panel of 3 or 5 judges. If you find yourself judging on a final round, you will be able to see, I'll show here, over here where it says panel, you'll be able to see who are the other judges in your round. And we ask that you don't start the round until all of the judges are present. So if you're on a panel of 5 judges, there should be 5 judges, and it's important to confirm with everyone who they are. Don't just assume that if there's 5 adults in the room, that those 5 adults are the judges. One of those might just be a spectator. So definitely make sure that all your judges are there. The other question I'll get is, how do you update your feedback? Once you've finished your round, this ballot will disappear and all your past scores will be in here under past scores. I unfortunately don't have that working in this fake example ballot, but you would go to that tab and you'd have a place where there'd be a button here. Instead of on my way, we'll say edit feedback, and you can come in there and you'll see text boxes for each student where you can update all your commentary for that student, for each student. As I said before, you have up until the end of the tournament to do that. Don't wait too long because you will be most likely judging back to back to back of rounds, and you will find that your memory is a bit fuzzy after each event, and you might not remember vividly what even if you're taking good notes. If you're like me, you might take notes in some kind of an abbreviation meant only for you. And if too much time passes, you might forget what you meant by that abbreviation. So you do have until the end of the day, but don't take too long without putting anything in Tabroom, because you might not be able to recall what you meant by all of your feedback. And with that, that's an overview of how all the technology works, an overview of how all the events work. Once again, open things up if there are any remaining questions.
I'm sorry, I have about 3 really short questions.
Sure,
Do judges bring their own devices to use to use Tabroom? Okay. About how much feedback are we giving each student? Like one positive, one area in need of improvement, or should it be more like a paragraph?
It's up to you. What we usually say is, especially if you're new to this and a little bit nervous about what appropriate feedback is, 1 or 2 really good comments is better than paragraphs of so-so comments. The goal of this, as we said before, is really we're trying to educate the kids, and they should have a sense of why they got the rank that they did. So the worst thing you can do is say, you were great, everything was perfect, and then rank them last. And they have no idea how to grow from there, what they can improve on. So definitely try to give them at least one thing that they did well, at least one thing that they can improve on. There's no maximum though. If you are inclined to give them a lot of feedback and a lot of actionable, constructive feedback, put in as much in there as you think is appropriate.
Okay, my last question is, I know you're gonna have a device, but are you, like, while the kid is talking, does it make them nervous if you're taking notes electronically? Or should you be, okay, so just type away while they're talking?
Yep, they are expecting, I mean, they are expecting it. You should look like you're taking notes. Like some judges will ask if they can use Tabroom on their phone. Yes, you can. And some people are better at smartphones than others and better at typing on the phone. But if you're using your device or your iPad or your thing, you should be paying attention to the student and writing your own notes. You shouldn't be scrolling on text messages or social media or anything. Give them your attention, but they do expect that most of what you're doing is looking up, taking a note, looking up, so on and so forth.
So I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question about the attendance. So I did sign up to be a judge with my school for this upcoming event.
Okay.
When would I find out that I am actually selected as a judge, since I am a new judge and I never did this before?
So that would really be up to your coach. So which school are you with?
I am with Xavier.
Sure. So you would reach out to one of the coaches from Xavier. They will tell you if they're using you this weekend or not. Typically, schools don't tend to have excess volunteers. So like I said, in order to attend the tournament, they need to bring a certain number of adults commensurate with the number of students that they're bringing. So typically, if you volunteer, they will try to use you, but that's really up to each individual school. We don't, as a tournament, we're not selecting or not selecting judges. It's up to the coaches who they want to bring with them.
Okay, and then once I'm selected by the school to go to the event, do I have an saying in the preference what I want to judge, or that's really decided by the office?
No, it's all randomized. So we put all your names. We have another view of this Tabroom software that we use to run the tournament, and it's all randomized. We press a button and it sorts kids into rooms, tries to balance things like the kids are hitting a good variety of schools, tries to balance things like that you're not always speaking first or always speaking last, and then it tries to balance judges based on all sorts of constraints like you can't judge someone from your own school. We need 10 judges for extemp, but we only need 3 judges for oratory, things like that. And it will slot everyone in randomly throughout the event. If you do have a strong preference for some type of event and you want to put that in your notes, it might affect, especially if we're assigning final round panels, we might try to fit people in the final round panels that have certain levels of expertise. So for example, some of our judges will be former competitors, and if the former competitor was a national champion in extemp, of course we want them to judge the extemp final if at all possible. So definitely let us know if you have preferences, and your coach can put notes when they register for the tournament, but you don't get to choose what you judge. Most of that is randomized.
How about one last question? That's about the Congress. So I did
Mhm,
not participate in the Congress training just yet.
mhm.
Would there be a chance that I will be selected to judge Congress?
Your coach shouldn't put you in to judge something if you haven't been trained for it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yes. And I will say, I don't know if anyone from the Congress rejoined here. Congress is a very intricate event all in and of itself. Most of what we've told you for speech does not apply to Congress. And it's definitely, if you're interested in becoming a judge for Congress, we do encourage you to go for Congress judge training and explain to you how that event works.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Other questions?
Hi, I have a question more like a timing. How long should we budget for the start and for the judge for them to finish?
So, um, so the day, I'm not sure if you're asking about the whole day or for an individual round, but here's an example of the schedule from a recent tournament. Let me just make it a bit bigger. So this is a typical New York local tournament schedule. So there'll be a judge meeting. Typically, we don't have this on here, but typically there would have been a judge meeting at 9:30. The rounds are about an hour and a half between each round. And depending on which event you're judging, you might have 4, 5, or 6 students in there. The students are on a 10-minute time limit or 7 minutes in the case of extemp. So based on that, there's a common time that the round is going to be. So if everyone's speaks exactly 10 minutes and there's 6 people in your round, then the round will be an hour long. There might be a couple of minutes as students are taking their seats and standing up to get to this front of the room. The round as itself doesn't have a time limit, but like I said, every round should be about the same duration. And if we in the office start seeing that all the other rounds are done and you haven't turned your ballot in, then we get a little bit nervous and we try to contact you. So say you have 6 students in your room, the round should be about an hour long, and you should have your ballot in within 5 or 10 minutes after the last student has finished speaking. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. So that means that looking at the chart, that means at 3 p.m. they finish. Does that mean the judge can leave at that time, or is that was just so I could, because I have a little chart at home to watch. Yeah.
So with this schedule, so the final round starts at 3 p.m. So figure that round would end about an hour after that. There's an award ceremony after the final round. You wouldn't necessarily need to stay for the award ceremony. Typically, the day will end at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on the tournament. So if you're volunteering for this, you're blocking off about 9 in the morning till about 5 in the afternoon.
I see. Thank you.
Is there a universal lunch period, or you just go out when you're free?
The lunch period will be in between round 3 and finals. If you are one of those judges that's only judging rounds 1 and 2, typically you could take your lunch break during round 3 also. And we do feed the judges. So there's judge hospitality. There'll usually be bagels and coffee or something like that in the morning, and food provided for judges in the afternoon. So we'll typically put that food out. If round 3 starts at 1, the food probably will come out at about 1:30 or something like that. So if you're not judging round 3, you can take your lunch then. Otherwise, everyone has the lunch break in between round 3 and finals.
So if my kid is there with me because he's competing and we're in the Bronx and he doesn't know the area, he's not going to eat with me as a judge. He's going to have his own food or go get some.
Correct. I don't know about this tournament and specifically. Typically, the Bronx tournaments tend to order pizza that the students can buy so that they don't have to go wandering around the Bronx. But it's a good idea to plan out either with the other students from the school or to check with the tournament about what the lunch options are and if they do need to bring their own food.
Frank, I think for this tournament, I'm not sure. I don't think Bronx is providing food.
Okay.
I can tell you that many of the tournaments, like Bronx, there's not really anything nearby. However, at Bronx, there are food truck guys who show up. So the school doesn't arrange that, but I know the last tournament we had at Bronx, there were a couple of food trucks out there. But the kids are typically, you can assume they're on their own when it comes to food, and in many of those schools, they're better off bringing it because there's just not a lot nearby.
And we do also get students doing things like DoorDash or ordering food to the school also as an option. Other questions?
Sorry, if I have to bring somebody to God, I guess can they stay somewhere? Like if I bring my daughter there, she's too young, but to watch, because is there a common area that she can hang out? So
So there will be there's a room called the Judge Lounge, and she can hang around there. This happens every now and then. If you do need to keep her with you, and hopefully she wouldn't be a distraction to the students performing. Right? We can't tell you just to leave her alone. That's not what we want to do. But the best place I would say is in the Judge Lounge. There'll be other adults in there as well.
I see. Okay, well, I'll try to find someone to watch instead. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Do we assume that students have gotten their feedback before the next round, before the next tournament? The feedback from any, like, okay.
They will get the feedback almost immediately. As soon as awards is over, we press a button and that just releases it out. Some coaches may choose, the coach has an option to say that I want to preview everything before the students see it. So it might be from your school, your coach might choose not to immediately make all the feedback available because they want to make sure everything's appropriate and preview it first. But typically the students will see all the feedback definitely by the next tournament. And you will start to get to know these kids and see them often, but there's a lot of kids. I think we have several hundred students at the tournament this weekend. There's a good chance that you're probably not going to judge the same kids every weekend and see that, but it is very rewarding as a judge to see someone grow in this activity and take your feedback and take other judges' feedback and gain skills in their tenure here.
And if I can say, Frank, too, I guess we just kind of assume that you know this, but we should say it. The coaches see what you write for the kids as well. As Frank said, we have the option of holding it back from the kids until we've read it, or we can let the kids see it the minute that it's posted by Frank at the tournament. Either way, though, usually the week after that tournament, the coach is going to sit down with the kid and go through the feedback and say, okay, what are we doing for next time? How do we use this to get a little bit better? So we do read that and we do see it and we use that as a tool to help with the kids.
Any final questions?
Oh, when does the season end?
So the last local tournament for us is March, middle of March. I forget the exact date. There are other tournaments that go through. If your student is very successful, there is a state championship that's in April. There are different qualifiers for national tournaments that are also in March and April. And then there are two or three big national tournaments in May and June that some students will attend. But the local season ends in the middle of March. And this is already, at this point, this is already our fourth or fifth local tournament. We began at the end of September, and we have about every other week or so, there's a local tournament.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Hi. I was wondering if there are any resources that show like sample performances with sample constructive feedback, maybe one or two
So
examples that
there
we
are
can see.
definitely, yeah. So there are definitely sample performances. So if you look on YouTube and search for speech and debate and search for one of these events, many of the final rounds of some of the invitational tournaments have made their way on YouTube and are out there for you to see. I'll see if we've been trying to collate some sample ballots and get some feedback. We don't have a ready available resource like that. But actually, we might have something from a recent invitational. Just give me a second to look for that.
But I'm not sure if Frank said this to you, because usually he says something like this. For most of these events, they're performance events. If you've been to a movie or a play and you've walked out and said, that was great, or wow, that moved me, or I forgot for a moment it was a play, that's all you're being asked to do. You don't have to be an expert in stagecraft or drama. It's just because the kids are meant to learn how to speak to a lay audience of intelligent adults. We're not training them, as I said before, to be appeals attorneys in front of the circuit court. They're meant to persuade, in the case of extemp, or to emotionally move, give emotional insight, in the case of the performance events, to an average intelligent adult. So you're not doing it wrong if you just talk about that.
Thank you.
If Grandma Julia can do it, how hard can it really be?
I was more thinking about all the different layers of the performance, like what layers should we touch on?
So
like
those sorts of guidelines are in the judge manual. If you look through there, there'll be examples of what types of criteria you can use, and you can borrow some language from there to be able to phrase things and know what sort of criteria to consider. That's in the judge manual, which was one of the links I shared in the chat a little while ago.
Yeah, I'm going to be reading that. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, thank you all so much. Thank you for giving us 2 hours of your time on this Thursday evening, and possibly 8 to 10 hours on the upcoming Saturday or some Saturday in the future. As I said at the beginning of this, we cannot do this activity without you all volunteering to help us out. We greatly appreciate you giving your time and everything that you do for these students to give them a great experience this weekend. So thank you all. I hope to see many of you on Saturday or at one of our Saturdays in the future. Thank you all and have a good night.